Welcome to our open book. Darlene, Joan A. Denny, Karen Smith, John O'Hara, S.R. O'Brien, Jeremy Sicking, Eric Luce, Mr. Dickens, Dorothy Joy, Dick Peterson, Diana Lynch, William Strauss, Roger Scott. Are we related, Roger? Nice to be with everyone. A meeting between President Trump and Mayor-elect Mamdani recently reminded me, pick up a book that I particularly enjoyed when I was a young aspiring journalist myself, Managing MAILER by Joe Flaherty. Joe Flaherty was a writer for the Village Voice. He wound up managing Norman Mailer's campaign for mayor when he ran in 1969 with his running mate for the president of the city council was the columnist Jimmy Breslin. And I didn't know until I just checked this afternoon that, God bless him, Joe Flaherty died about 10 years after writing the book. He was an interesting guy. He had dropped out of high school at the age of 16, worked on the docks there in Brooklyn, and began to write for the Village Voice. It's a very engaging memoir. Norman Mailer was a writer who ran for mayor of New York. His idea, he and Jimmy Breslin, was to make New York the 51st state. They had a number of other things like Sweet Sunday, where they would essentially pull the electric plug. There'd be no power in the city. No elevators, no L's, no power, no electricity.
And they didn't win?
Sweet Sunday. Even Norman Mailer joked, I was reading today, that the first hot day people would be after him. They wanted to make public transit free, weren't certain how it was done. They wanted to ban all private auto traffic from Manhattan. It would have been just buses and cabs and
bicycles.
Bicycles. I think they would actually give people a free bicycle. Wasn't clear how any of this would be afforded, but in any event, the big thing was New York, the 51st state. So let me read when the campaign, which I don't mean to, I think we can say it was a long time ago, they didn't win. Got 5% of the vote. But the campaign is beginning to unspool. And that's when they're able to afford, however, some of their, because Norman Mailer pays for it, their first campaign ads. Let me see where to pick this up. So Joe Flaherty writes, Norman Mailer, on top of everything else, God bless him, had just won the Pulitzer Prize for literature for his book, The Armies of the Night, which we have over there. I might read from sometime. Joe Flaherty writes, we scheduled the taping for June 11 and submitted the spots we'd written to Mailer. He read our efforts, but there was no word of praise or damnation heard at headquarters. So, as Banning, Tully, Frankie, these are members of the campaign staff, whom we induced back for a female voice in the promise of a good farewell party, Manso, it was Peter Manso, the journalist, Peter Manso. Joyce Mitchell and I waited in the sound studio on West 44th Street. We had no idea what we were going to record. Like Beckett characters not knowing their next move, we were waiting for Mailer. Joanne Pickett and her husband Bob, a radio announcer, arrived with the sound engineer, and the small studio became as crowded as a closet. To make matters work, Dick Fontaine arrived with his film crew to shoot the event for posterity. So what little air was left was being cooked by the movie lights. To alleviate the situation, I sent out for a couple of cases of beer, a brilliant tactic which saved our brains from baking, but not from steaming. Mailer finally came in and promptly told us that our collective craftsmanship was, quote, a lot of shit. Blunt to be sure, but one genuflex to his literary betters, and we awaited his brilliant 30 seconds. By this time, I had forgiven the Times. New York Times wrote something, figuring the gray old lady of journalism didn't understand us. But now he had the electric airways to charge his genius, and we were anxious. He inexplicably stalled. For good reason. When he revealed what we were to record, the room exploded. He had written an honest-to-goodness jingle. It was based on the street nugget he had picked up at Bedford-Stuyvesant. You had the rest, now vote the best, with 30 seconds of Paris Saloon, circa 1920 repetitions. If the collective mentality of the electorate was that of Alice B. Toklas, then we were home an easy winner. I screamed, telling him he had gone too far this time. Tully pleaded with him as a football coach pleads with a gifted but loony quarterback. Jimmy Breslin, burst into the studio, took one look at the script, and bellowed, "Bullshit! We have too much class to record this." Banning walked to the microphone and in his announcer's tone said, "Welcome to the MAILER Breslin Circle Jerk Studio." Joanne Pickett moaned, "My God, Bob isn't going to record this. He's a professional." I sent out for another case of beer. MAILER started to brood under our attack. In his own mind, we once again were all against him. This turned out to be a problem in the campaign. He thought his own staff was often plotting against him.
That is a problem.
That is a problem. He told Breslin to read the jingle aloud and it would sound good in his ear. Jimmy countered, "You could have Richard Burton read it and it wouldn't do nothing to my ear." I went back to MAILER and told him it was impossible. He shouted, "I'm sick and fucking tired of arguing with you. We'll do it my way. It's my money." Banning pleaded again on the basis of his professional radio experience, but MAILER shouted him down too. Banning slumped in his chair, his arms outstretched, his hands in the last vestige of his professionalism, waiting for the nails. As the man said, it was his money. So we prepared to record. Breslin and I were chosen to read the commercial, probably because we sounded like the only legitimate members of the Dead End Kids in the campaign. Do we need to explain who the Dead End Kids were? Really? Well, they were movie characters, real New York street types, the Dead End Kids. How's that?
Good.
What followed had to be more traumatic to the ghost of Edward Murrow than the Battle of Britain was to him. For 14 takes, Breslin and I, alternating roles, one monotonously reading the opposition's names, the other snappily giving the jingle, and we read the following. Now, the recitation are all the candidates who were running. This was the ad. Wagner, Badillo, Schuer, Procaccino, Esposito. Wagner, Esposito, Badillo, Wagner, 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 Wagner. You've had the rest. Now vote the best. MAILER Breslin, 51.
I like it.
MAILER Breslin and the 51st state. Vote MAILER Breslin for the 51st state. Democratic primary, Tuesday. Takes were interrupted by Jimmy's stopping and shouting, "I don't like the copy after 4 Wagners. It's got fucking cancer." Or, "Jesus, Norman, Jesus, it sounds like an Excedrin commercial." Or such coaching gems to me as, "Joe, the beer is bad for your breathing." Or Banning shouting at me, "You prick, you stole my beer." Orson Welles would have been impressed. Now, mind you, this is a group of New York literati that's getting together to record.
Literati.
After many, many beers, Jimmy decided that one take, because of our accents, had a Jersey City charm, like vote for Jimmy McHugh. He's a father, a legionnaire, and Father Murphy from St. Dominic recommends him. The whole fucking thing, Breslin surmised, will go over great in Hoboken. Banning by now was reciting a drunken litany. It's awful, it's awful, it's awful. On reflection, Breslin became his acolyte. It's so bad, it's so bad, it's so bad. Mailer consoled. After you hear it 6 or 7 times, you'll love it, Jimmy. And Banning rejoined, I'd rather fucking lose it than fucking love it. Number 14 was it. Mailer was sober and satisfied. The rest of us were drunk and disgusted. The following Sunday at noon, it was aired.
Do we get a repeat of it?
Want me to repeat it?
Yes.
Wagner Badillo. Sure Procaccino, Esposito. Wagner Esposito, Badillo, Wagner, 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 Wagner. You had the rest. Now vote the best. Mailer Breslin, 51. Mailer Breslin and the 51st state. Vote Mailer Breslin and the 51st state. Democratic primary, Tuesday. I've always wanted to record this ever since I read about it.
It's slightly repetitive.
Right now, Scott.
I guess so. You're right. Finally. The following Sunday at noon, it was aired, and an irate woman called campaign headquarters demanding to speak to the campaign manager. This, of course, was Joe Flaherty. She accused me of embarrassing a great candidate with my asinine mind and said I should be fired for creating such a stupid and vulgar commercial. With no more patience left, I shouted into the mouthpiece, Madam, believe it or not, you have just heard a fucking Pulitzer Prize jingle.
Bless them all.
I'll just continue a little more. On the evening of the day we taped, we attended a $50 a head fundraiser at the E60's home of a diet doctor who was a friend of Beverly's. This was Norman Mailer's wife. It was a sour collection that gathered at baronial digs, the house with its huge Spanish halls and impressive guests. Parenthetically, Shirley MacLaine, David Merrick, the Broadway producer, and King Peter of Yugoslavia. Honest. Looked like a Fellini set. To add to the decadence, there was a gilded cage of an elevator, the sort usually associated with dotty ladies in Tennessee Williams plays. 2 rock bands blared in the halls, men in ice cream white good humor suits, which had their mirthless souls drunk with women in plastic see-through dresses. A phenomenon of the 60s, saran wrap. The staff drank. We drank darkly. Contrary to the mutterings of the denizens of the saloon, always is life in booze, but tonight it was twisted as the hump on Richard III's back. And here it was, writes Joe Flaherty, that I despaired. So far, I'd checked my drinking during the campaign to 3 occasions. At first hint of a swoon in the soul and the beginnings of surrender, I darkly wondered, would a sinister day follow? Mailer was at no fault here. The air I polluted was that which I encased in my own tight little eye. Mailer, though sober, was caught up in the blackness of events. In retrospect, in an act of kindness, he jauntily walked up and hooked me in the head, saying, Boy, I bet you'd like to hit me. Perception, my man, always had. I laughed, and for a moment he managed to break my mood. It was the kindest act of the campaign. The setting was unendurable. The staff decided to split to the Lion, said that was a famous watering hole in New York, where Pete Hamill writes about. That's where he did his drinking before he also gave it up. The next day, headquarters looked like a ward for the lobotomized and the shell shock. Tables where coffee cups once stood were populated with beer cans. The drinking was not blatant or boisterous, and only the most perceptive eye could sense the despair that prompted it. No one got drunk or even splurred a word. In fact, it was still a sober operation. What was taking place was that a band of once merrymakers with the proper maintenance injection were reduced to functioning, effective to be sure, but performing without wit or passion. Our magic had fled. Headquarters was an island of the damned, the rulers and the ruled, a functioning body of zombies. This book is falling apart. Managing Mailer. And I was so sad to read about Joe Flaherty's death. I had no idea. I found myself wondering why I hadn't read much by him. So tomorrow, Nobody's Girl, a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice. Virginia Roberts Guthrie.
Joffrey, I think. I'm not sure.
But our friend Amy Wallace was her co-author. And we will speak with Amy tomorrow about this important book. So, and her personal story and why it was important to her to write it and what she went through to bring it to the page. So, jingles were, yes, you're absolutely right, Karen Smith. I did one of my first newsletters on political jingles, and some of them are hysterically funny. Vote Stevenson, vote Stevenson. But a man you can believe in, son.
Sure.
From Illinois, whence Lincoln came. Yeah, you can see where that's. All right, that's not a good one. All right, here's one. Ready?
Yes.
Oh, don't blame me. I'm voting for Puchinsky. Yes, Puchinsky, Roman Puchinsky. Oh, no, you can't blame me. I'm voting for Puchinsky because Puchinsky get things done. He doesn't talk about a crisis like unemployment or rising taxes. He doesn't talk about a crisis because Puchinsky gets things done. Roman Puchinsky of Chicago alderman was running for senator against Chuck Percy. Not an easy task.
And he lost.
With a
Jingle like that.
However, his daughter Aurelia became city treasurer, and I liked Roman Puchinsky. It was that long city council meeting after I won't go into all of it, but it was after the death of Mayor Daley, and they couldn't decide on who the temporary mayor would be. And of course, I was an accredited reporter, but not part of the City Hall bunch. So I was trying to get onto the floor to report, and Roman Puchinsky, the alderman, was there. And I said, Alderman Puchinsky, I'm trying to get on the floor. And he said, come with me, Polly. Put his arm around me. And walked in together. So Dennis Kucinich rhymes with spinach. I didn't know that jingle. That would be...
It'd be better without that, actually.
Yeah. So thanks very much for being with us on our open book. We'll look forward to speaking with Amy Wallace tomorrow. Thanks for being with us. Take care. Bye-bye.